welcome James Dodds to the Wooden Boat Gathering. Really thrilled to have you here, James. This is fantastic. I'm going to hand over to you now, and thank you very much.
It's very nice to be here, very nice to be invited, and to have met such a lot of lovely people. And the speakers before me have all been fascinating, and I'm not quite sure if I can live up to what they've been talking about, but I'll give it a try. I like to think that I celebrate the art of the boat builder. That's what I see my role in doing. You may be wondering why I've put a picture of the archers up. So I'm going to briefly just talk about where I come from. My father was a Radio Times illustrator, and one of his claims to fame was he was the first person to depict the archers in 1950 in the BBC Light programme. And so that was his mother and a farm labourer who posed for the archers. One of the stories my father told me was when we were on holiday once, and he was sort of one side of a sand dune lying on the beach, and I was playing with another young person, and the father of this child said, "Oh, what does your father do?" And apparently there was this really long pause, and I said, "He's a shipwright." And I can't remember it, but looking back, all I can think is that being born in Brightlingsea, all of the other boys in my school were either sons of fishermen or shipwrights. And so obviously at some point I had this early premonition that that's what's part of my journey. Let's see if we can move on. So, as the son of an artist, I would often have to pose for my father. This is me posing as young Peter Grimes in Benjamin Britten's The Sea Interludes. He was going to do a whole series of drawings to illustrate the Sea Interludes. The project never got finished, but when I got to college, in fact, I probably should talk about before I get to the college bit, I should talk about my apprenticeship in the boatyard. So I did fulfill my wish to become a shipwright, and while I was still at school, I worked weekends on the Baltic Trader, and then I heard of a job going in Malden in Walter Cook and Sons, looking for an apprentice to work with the old boat builder Alf Last, and applied and got the job. But so I left school at 15, went and worked in the boatyard. Alf didn't really want me there. He rather resented having to be a teacher as well. So I was always nipping off outside to help them move the barges around, and any kind of moving of any heavy bits of wood always involved everyone in the yard, so it was a good excuse to get outside. But the kind of boats that I've got my story back to front, but the kind of it's kind of winkle brig that Alf was building as a barge boat, and also as a sailing winkle brig. So actually we'll flip on. So this is one of the distractions of outside the boat shed. This was bending a 3-inch bit of oak for a bow rail of one of the barges, and on that particular occasion the steam tug was fired up, and we were using high pressure steam to into the steaming chest to steam the bow rail, which certainly made the wood much more pliable. but this is us messing around, trying to bend a piece of wood round. And this is one of the first times that I curved the space, really just to get more in to the picture, but also to give the views up and down the quay. A lot of barges were being converted from motor barges back into sail, and that was really the main business. A lot of advertising money. Tate and Lyle and some of the big seed merchants were paying for their old motor barges to be converted back into sailing barges. So this is Brightlingsea. This is where I was born. I've curved the space. I like to think I'm kind of making it some sort of boat-shaped communities, but it's also, as I said, giving you the views up and down the waterfront. So the two Brightlingsea 1 designs were my great aunt's. She was very superstitious and wouldn't have number 13, so she numbered it 12 and a half. 12A, sorry. 12A. Yeah, this is the yard. This is Walter Cook and Sons. I did this one to celebrate the 100 years of the yard existing, and it shows the old way of floating a barge onto blocks to be able to work on them between tides, and a more convenient way of sinking a lighter or a pontoon and refloating it with the boat on, so you could work, not interrupted by the tide. And that's Alf's boat shed just there. One of the jobs was keeping the beach clean with this great big wooden rake. So this is a drawing I did at the time of Alf. He was continually looking out the window, seeing what was going on. His tools were so worn down, his chisel was probably only about half an inch to the handle, and the saws, they're all like little children's tools. They've been sharpened so much. I mean, his plane blade was within an inch of the slot, and no tempering at all. He was spending more time sharpening them all the time. And but they were his tools, and he knew what he could do with them, and it all worked very well for him. So I did a year in the yard, and then went off to shipbuilding training school in Southampton, Woolston, and this was one of the drawings I did for my workbook. And I think, as Abby was saying yesterday, I can't remember what she was saying now. Sorry. It was all very good. The practical application of skill makes learning and mathematics and all of those things which I completely went over my head at school started to make sense. Going to the training school, you're given a mathematical formula for working out the area of a floor. How many boards will you need? Practical application of things. Suddenly, it kind of all made sense. And the boat building gave me that confidence, once I'd finished my apprenticeship, to go back into education. And fortunately, at that time, you could still get back into art school without any O-levels, just on the strength of your portfolio. So this is one of the last jobs I did in the yard, was to actually take all the lines off Gravesend, Borley, called the Lillian, and my partner David Patience, who I worked with, he then went on to build the Marigold. This is another job I worked on. This is on a floating pontoon off Heybridge Basin, and it must have been the coldest winter ever. The wind came right up the Blackwater, and one morning I was stoking the fire for the steaming chest. I was standing there, 2 pairs of trousers, a boiler suit, and suddenly, oh, this is nice, and looked down, my trousers were on fire. And you suddenly realise how dangerous tar-soaked boiler suits can be. But the Gladys has more recently been completely rebuilt at Gloucester Docks. So all of the work that we did then was undone. But I've lived long enough to see boats that we rebuilt rotting in creeks and things around East Anglia. The North Down, which is I think in France now, is in a very sorry state, and I think there's 1 or 2 others that are going that way. Sorry, this is again the Winkle Brig. This is the kind of boat I learned to sail on, very much like the Swallows and Amazons boat. We went from Mersey Island and camped up behind the island on a little island called Ray Island, which is meant to be where the fictional Mahala comes from, if anyone knows the Baring Gould story. A very sort of Victorian melodrama of morals written by the local vicar. So this is Wivenhoe, where I live now. Again, making a sort of boat-shaped composition which keeps bringing your eye back into the picture. Wivenhoe One designs and the boats that were all there at the time. Put the shipyard back and put the port back, so I could sort of pick and choose what I wanted to hold on to. I like to think that unlike a photograph, which is a snapshot of a moment in time, my pictures are like an accumulation of memories, so that it's somebody clever said that my lino cuts compress time and space, so which I rather like. So this is the blue boat, which was kind of my breakthrough painting, totally done from memory of the kind of boat that I would have helped to build. And this, I had an offer of a big show in the local art museum, and I got a very complicated picture. The trouble with art school was that there was a lot of intellectual justification for things, and so there was a very complicated painting full of references to other artists, and all being very too clever, really. And it got so difficult to actually finish this painting, to resolve it. But I got offered this big space, and I just painted this boat over the top of this complicated picture, and I thought, oh, that was fun, I enjoyed that. It'll never sell, but it will fill a space. I mean, the painting was probably the size that it is up there. And and it sold immediately. I thought I'll do another one of those. And so that was probably 25 years ago now. It kind of, my father being an artist, running away to the boatyard, gaining my confidence and coming back into the art world, and then sort of refinding what I really knew about, which was the boat building. And so it kind of, it brought together the kind of different sides of me into one thing. And this sort of led to the whole show touring. It went to the National Maritime Museum, it went to the new museum in Cornwall, National Maritime Museum of Cornwall, which incidentally I've had a more recent show at, and there's lots of old catalogues at the back which you're all welcome to have one free. I had far too many printed because I thought this is going to be great, and the show was locked down twice during the pandemic, so it kind of lost its momentum. So I've got boxes and boxes of these catalogues. So please take one with you when you go. As I said at the beginning, I like to think I'm celebrating the work, celebrating the art of the boat builder. And so I've kind of followed various big projects. This was the Pioneer, which was dug out of the mud and completely rebuilt, and is now doing sail training. And so I've followed various big projects like this. So I actually did this before she was actually sailing. This is one of her in the shed with the deck beams and ready to lay the deck. So another big project I followed was the building of the Pellew down in Truro, Luke Powell and working sail. So this was how she was when I first saw her. It's kind of the perfect stage for me when you've got all of the frames in place and the planking's just going on. It really shows the shape of the boat. So there's one of her sailing. So this was actually lofted out. This was these were on 6 panels, 7 foot tall. So I think it's 26 feet long. It's about a third of the size of the real boat. So this is a close up of the body plan. I'm putting all the lines of planking on, which I now know full well why naval architects don't draw the planking on. They leave that to the boat builder because it's almost impossible to get it right, especially with a counter, to get the line of planks. So there was lots of redrawing and redrawing. But the way I'm painting it obviously is nothing to do with the lines drawings or even a real boat. It's just a way of breaking the space up, making a more decorative image, I guess. This is a liner cut in progress. This is Caldercott's up in Yorkshire. This is one I'm working on at the moment. So all of the lino cuts are done on this old-fashioned lino, which is just cork, flour, linseed oil pressed on a Hessian back, just the old-fashioned lino. And the tools, mainly the tools are a scalpel and a little tiny gouge and a little V-shaped tool. And so this is my press. This is a proofing press, a Western proofing press. These are really the largest I can print on the press. So in fact, this image on there is this image.
Where's that, Jamie?
This is Macduff's shipyard on the Murray Firth. I've got a long-term project of doing a book of boats and harbours from the Shetlands to the Scillies, partly to illustrate what Gail was talking about, the evolution of the shape of boats from the influence of the Vikings and the Norwegian boats of the Shetlands and Orkneys down the coast to the cobbles and the beach boats of Cromer, down to the very broad boats like the Lyret, and obviously the shape has evolved over centuries, and to suit the conditions and the seas. You get the big Atlantic swell for needing the sharp Shetland boats to the short seas of the English Channel. A friend of mine built a replica of a Hastings boat, which is very broad, and it just wouldn't sail very well on the Blackwater. But as soon as they took it down to the south coast, it was in its natural element, and it immediately made sense to why the boats were that shape. So this is the paper's been rolled. So that the paper's on the top there, and the plate is there. The ink is rolled over, and the paper is then rolled over the top. And so there you've got a print, and there it's up, hanging up to dry. This is very satisfying, this bit, because most of them take about 3 months to cut. So actually to get a result, it's very satisfying. So there again, that's the print that was printed just last week. This is another one of the Murray Firth. This is Port Soy, and some of the boats that go to the big festival up there. Wonderful little harbour and buildings, etc. So this is a foreen. This is such a beautiful shape, and you can see it's it's Viking ancestry there, as clear as anything. That's probably a little bit bigger than the real painting, but there's a smaller version I've got here of the same boat. I like to paint the boats out of the water, and from a low viewpoint, much as a boat builder would see the boat when it's sitting up on the stocks. I mean, you look along the shear line, and you get this wonderful figure of 8 in the shear line. So your eye is taken back and leads back into it, a bit like the lino cuts. Your eye is held by the shape. So there's a lino cut of one up on the Shetland coast. That one I did in response to a poem by Kathleen Jamie, and I then said if she wanted to use it on the cover of her collection, which she did, which was very nice. I think it's almost harder for a poet to make a living than it is an artist. So having a small printing press and things, poetry is something that it's easy to do a publication of, and again in the same way that of helping promote boat builders, I think that it gives another angle to a poet to have some. I mustn't say illustrate poems. That's not right. It's accompany poems. So this is Cobble. This is one I did from a tiny little black and white photograph in a wonderful book by Peter Frank called Yorkshire Fisher Folk. And I think the builder of that immediately recognised it as one of his, which was satisfying. I've always what's the word? If I get praise from a boat builder, I think I've cracked it. I value that praise more than any other, I think. This is a bigger cobble. This is or I should say Coble from Northumberland, Golden Gate, which was the local port of another poet called Katrina Porteous, who I've done several little books with. These ones have a sort of a cuddy half deck. So this was the little harbour, lines of rocks that go out into the sea. The beach was sort of hardened up with mussel shells that had been the mussels had been used to bait the long lines, and so her collection of poems was called The Blue Lonnen, which is the blueness from the mussel shells that line the beach. Right, I've had lots of shows in London, but I got offered a show in Maine, which is a sort of boat builder's heaven. There's lots of money and lots of materials and an enormous amount of English boat builders working over there. They were building a replica of a boat called the Discovery for Jamestown. There's a series of lino cuts of, this is Rockland, Maine. They had quite an interesting slipway with these little sort of casters, like a ball bearing race really. The wheels are not attached to the slipway, they're just on these little bogies that the girders slide up and down on. So this is a Thames skiff in the museum at Henley. Hecate. Now this was one that Colin, I think, restored for David Messam, who's the gallery that I'm with in London, and his family built skiffs up above Richmond Bridge, and so I think it was probably where the first time I met Colin was this was included in one of the exhibitions alongside my paintings. So this was building the Royal Barge Gloriana for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. It was so long they had to hire an industrial unit to build it in, and it's all plywood and in Aldridge, kind of construction. They had 2 Lloyd's agents there full time to supervise that this was being built up to A1 standard. The shift of planks was one of the big issues. Obviously with plywood you were going to have lots of scarves, so they were scarfing them before cutting them, but even so they were, I don't think they could keep to the rule of having whatever it is, 4 planks in between each scarf or something, I can't remember quite. So this is another liner cut in progress. So this is the Gloriana by Richmond Bridge and the buildings behind. Now, my technique has evolved over the years. I paint on a dark ground and scrape the paint back to reveal the brown ground through the paint. But this technique I'm painting mainly with a pointing trowel and laying the paint on very lightly, and it seemed the only way to deal with a wreck. This is a wreck of a Baltic trader, and it's a technique which I'm using all the time now. And again, this little tiny one was painted with a little crank shaft palette knife, same as a pointing trowel really. This is a little Falmouth workboat I fell in love with. It was on the beach in there. And Shadow, it's called. And there was various planks hanging off it, which I couldn't help but put back. But it's the most beautiful, beautiful shape. I think she's over 100 years old. Nice little workboat. This is a Norfolk wherry yacht, closer to home to Abby's Queen of Light, same waters. This was built by the Collins family, and Ian Collins is now an writer of art books and has written several books for me. And so the gallery owner, the artist, and the writer all had historical links with boat building. I think Ian told me once that he was disgraced from his family when he tried to open a can of baked beans with one of his father's chisels. So I don't think any of it transferred to him. So this is the kind of view that I really like to paint. A low viewpoint. This is called Black Boat. And I was saying to somebody before today that I was doing this, and they said, "Well, what do boats mean to you?" And my first response is that they mean everything, because they encapsulate, for me, they encapsulate everything about my life, but they also, we're an island nation. They link into so much of our history and our sort of DNA. They're like, a lifeboat can be like offer salvation, and boats that carry the dead across the River of Styx. And we've got an example of a funeral boat, purely by chance at the back there, which carried bodies across to an island in Scotland to where everyone was buried on an island. So symbolically, they're very much part of our culture. So when I got offered a job of designing a window for our local church, I insisted that it would be a blue boat. The symbol of a boat is very apt for a church, because the nave of the church, the name nave, that holds the congregation, comes from the word for ship, the Latin name for ship, navalus. So it's literally something that embraces and holds the community together, and some of the feeling that I've had from this event, really, that the boat world is a community bound together. And so this is the same from the outside at night time. The boat's always coming towards you, whether you're inside or outside. I designed that during lockdown, and that was a great thing to be doing at that time. And at the moment that we could travel, I took the cartoon, life-size cartoon, up to Scotland, and for it to be made. Lots of technical problems. It's in a metal framework, and we couldn't find anybody who would install something in the non-traditional way. But I didn't want to break I had to break the thin lines of the planks somehow with the glazing bars, but I didn't want to break it horizontally as well. So they're rather large panels. Okay, I'm sorry that's all a bit garbled, but if anyone has any questions...